Truth, logic, action, power. It's the GreggHoush show here on New Revolutionary Radio. From the Leonard School in Malden, Massachusetts, Gregg and company are here to bring a sense of ethics to your news. Whether it's politics, activism, or current events, we always seek to inform and never to deceive. Let's start the show.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the GreggHoush Show, episode 15, with co-hosts Kayla and Mac.
The Mac
as
Daddy,
always.
It's the Mac attack. It's the big Mac.
You're used to this
He's
by
back
now.
in Mac. I gotta get more of these puns for you.
You really do. You really do. Those are starting to, run dry here.
You need fresh material.
And special guest for the episode tonight is Barrett Brown. You there, Barrett?
Oh, what's up? Yeah, I'm wicked excited to be here.
We might be in Boston, and he might be giving us shit for that.
Boston's the greatest city in the world. It's the hub of the universe.
The hub of the universe. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Is that what you think? I disagree.
What I know. It's what I know.
I disagree. I have lived in some better places. Chicago is one of them.
Nah, you can't do Chicago. They got stupid pizza out there.
That's your complaint?
Uh-huh. I'm gonna complain about the pizza.
All right. Well, there you go.
Stupid.
So Barrett, we were all hanging around, palling around for years on end, and then out of nowhere, you up and get thrown in prison, and I don't see you for 5 years. And,
wasn't quite out of nowhere.
I was just gonna say, I feel like you kind of felt that one too.
Nowhere. Didn't see it coming. No, we all saw it coming. We all knew it was coming, and I still. So yesterday, Barrett, you'll love and hate this one. I was looking for a specific business card that I thought must have been in my wallet, and then I took it out, and I have this pile of just the old business cards that I haven't thrown away yet for some various reason. So I'm digging through it, and I run into the Rolling Stone business card for Michael Hastings.
Oh, well.
It took me back to, because I was also thinking about the fact that I was going to ask you to come on the show this week, and it took me back to a bar that me, you, and him were sitting at in New York, where I got into an argument with him over you about the fact that we both thought you were going to prison, and that at some point you were going to step over a line, and you yelled at us about not giving a fuck, and how, you were going to keep doing what you were going to do, and if that was the outcome, that was the outcome. And we finished off that conversation yelling at him about how, while Barrett's going to end up in prison, you're going to end up dead if you keep doing what you're doing. And then, I looked back on that a year down the road, and there you are awaiting, federal trial, and there he is dead. And
this is a great love story.
That's like one of the worst times all of us were ever right. And when I saw the card, it just brought that whole evening back to me, and it made me want to reach back out to you again and get you on the show even more.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Really.
You like the association?
Absolutely. It's fantastic. It's wicked fantastic. Michael Hastings, of course, was somebody I got involved with back in 2009 and was actually kind of a formative influence on Project PM before it became what it became, before it became sort of an extension of Anonymous. And he was somebody who kind of opened up some of these cans of worms in terms of challenging journalistic institutions and at the same time challenging states in ways that were unusual for that profession. And so he was obviously somebody who I think was one of the early figures in this much wider movement of kind of reform from without.
And his big win to date was, of course, getting McChrystal sent home.
There was that. There was a lesser known, but I think equally important one where he went to Afghanistan again, and this time discovered that 2-star generals were using Army psyops against visiting senators to encourage further support for the war. And he reported that in Rolling Stone too. Didn't get, there's a number of times and places in which something like that would become an actual scandal would be addressed. The U.S. isn't one of those times and places. This is the modern U.S. That's unfortunate, but he was somebody who scored some points for transparency and for honesty, just in general.
And for those out there who haven't caught on yet, Michael Hastings was a reporter. staffer for Rolling Stone, a friend of Barrett's, a friend of mine, a friend of many people on what I would call this side of the fight. And he ended up dead in mysterious circumstances, to say the least. We don't need to go down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, but I definitely have mine.
Where was he found dead?
Well, he was in his car. The engine was a couple 100 feet away, and
Frank Underwood
and
again.
where the engine was supposed to be was the tree that he was. The tree was in the engine bay of the car, and you don't hit a tree and then have the engine fly out like magically through the tree. No, the engine like an explosion sent the engine flying before it wrapped itself around the tree, because the engine was literally, or the tree was literally where the engine goes. That's just not their version of the story is not really plausible. But that's another episode where we get into conspiracy theories. I think let's keep going here. Barrett, like when you came out, it was really nice to actually just hear your voice, hear that you felt like free for a moment, even if there was tons of restrictions. It was fun getting to talk to Alex about his fun times with you and the fact that you guys were shooting that little video and whatnot. But what did it feel like for you on the day you got out? Because I remember mine. It was a very interesting day.
Yeah, it was just more of the same. I mean, it's just at a certain point, it all kind of runs together. You don't really, it's just one more unusual experience, in a series of unusual experiences. It was a lot of hassle, a lot of stress, because we were trying to get to the halfway house within a certain period of time so that I wouldn't get a escape charge. And at the same time, we're having to film. They have another car with cameras, and we got to arrange for that and take shots and that kind of thing. So it was, it was just there wasn't really time to feel much.
Makes sense. You're out, you're starting to do stuff. I read the first article from you in D Magazine again. Thanks, Tim. And I find you covering the local Dallas city councilors. And I got to tell you, I never thought I would be able to read anyone covering city councilors and be interested and be riveted and make it to the end of the article. And that was amazing.
Yeah, I had to do it. I had the BOP when I was on home supervision or home confinement. I had to have a job, a 40-hour-a-week job. They didn't count my Intercept column as a job. They didn't count my book deal as a job. So I went over to D Magazine and covered that. And I was actually got pretty lucky because we have an interesting political environment down here.
Part of your release was getting a 40-hour-a-week job. That's so confusing.
It was for restitution. They
I
wanted
I understand
to
that,
force
but
restitution.
the irony of it, like the fact that it's like, oh, here's a convicted or appealed felon charge, and now you're gonna. It's like half of America can't get jobs because of their convictions, and here they're gonna force someone to.
Well, they all have to do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, when you're under home confinement, you have to do it. Same thing with probation. You have to, and they do throw obstacles in your way. And obviously, for most part, people, it's difficult, and they don't make it any easier. But that's just one of many things that the little factors that come into play. When you get out, you're still subject to all of these bizarre, rules. And then when the rules don't really apply, they'll make up rules. As was written about back then, a few months ago, I was rearrested by the U.S. Marshals in April at the orders of the BOP, the Bureau of Prisons, for having continued to do interviews. I had PBS coming and I had Vice TV coming, and they became aware of it, and they told me that I couldn't do it without their permission, and I told them that's not true, that I've been doing interviews even within prison without their permission, that I had all the procedures are laid out in a single document, the Bureau of Prisons media program statement. And nonetheless, and I recorded them. I recorded this phone conversation, put it up, and then the next day I was arrested by the marshals. And then the D Magazine, the editor there, hired a very capable law firm up in New York to challenge my confinement. And then as soon as they did that, I was released 4 days later. So it was very telling that they have they have nothing to fear from rearresting a journalist for doing something that he's illegally allowed to do and that he's constitutionally allowed to do, and that there are no constraints based on his former inmate status that prevented him from doing it, and they know that even if it gets challenged and I get out, no consequences will come to anyone involved. That's why they do these things. That's why they will continue to do these things.
That is the state of the Bureau of Prisons here in the United States. It is a horrible thing. Many of us have had to deal with that, and there's not much to really be done about it, like you say. I mean,
It's kind of like the shift of like America right now with journalism in its entirety. Like we have like big conglomerates buying up like news media stations, dictating what people can write, firing people when they write something that they don't want to hear. You've got supposedly the president calling things fake news when we can see with our own two eyes like what's in front of our face.
Ultimately,
fascism.
the even worse problem, even beyond the overt censorship or control of certain media outlets, is the sort of incompetence and just day-to-day just lack of negative feedback within the media itself. As in, most journalists, it's they don't necessarily have good sources of information, and even when they do, even those that do a good job of bringing these things to bear, it doesn't really matter. There's a very high threshold that has to be reached for anyone in governments to become the focus of negative attention from the Congress or the other regulatory bodies or the citizenry. And so, given the complexity of this republic and given the deficits in our news media and our citizenry, quite frankly, these things generally are not fixed. They just deteriorate further. And that is why, journalism for me has always been kind of a part-time thing. It's why I've always been interested in ways and to build up opposition to these systems and figure out what are the best ways in which we can get these things done ourselves, since Congress won't do them and since the average citizen won't do them.
On that note, I'd love to go back to the past there, where we kind of first met, which was you had written an article that had been published in the Huffington Post. And I went up and grabbed your email address after reading this article and just sent you an email, just, saying I'd read the article. And, I don't remember the exact contents of it, but it was more, do you really believe what you said, was what I was trying to get across. And this was the article where you stated that the tactics of Anonymous, if not Anonymous itself, its tactics, would someday be used to topple nation states, and that people related to these types of tactics would get involved in toppling nation states. And this was a couple years before the Arab Spring actually happened, that you had written that. And then, 2 years later, we find ourselves in chat channels talking to Tunisians who are asking us to help because they're planning a revolution.
Yeah, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy in that sense that we actually tried to help make it happen. Obviously, you had enough Tunisians over there, such as Slim Amadou, who were involved in Anonymous and also involved on the ground with the Tunisian Revolution, that this is something that was kind of inevitable. The strategies were all there, the networks were all there. This was something that was going to happen eventually. We were going to see the internet become a major factor in terms of all the propaganda and the information spreading that's required to really stage a revolution, to convince the people that the time is right and that this is viable. And we saw that a number of times. We saw Anonymous, to various degrees, get involved in revolutions throughout that region and elsewhere. And then after that, we saw some very successful campaigns that Anonymous was heavily involved in, SOPA, things of that nature. You saw, in Poland, you saw members of parliament donning Guy Fawkes masks one day, at some point. That was an interesting time period. And
It was. I
that
remember
was a
waking up
very
that morning to that picture. So someone had already sent it to me, like by the time I woke up, because time zones and everything, and I just almost couldn't believe that they were wearing the masks. Up on my wall, hanging above me while they were doing that, was the mask that I had from the day we had kind of chosen to use those masks. The one that I had brought to show everyone on IRC, like, this is literally the brand and mask we're going to use. And then there I'm standing right below that at the computer screen with Poland, with their parliament wearing Guy Fawkes. It was crazy. It was really, really crazy.
It goes to show, what can happen in this environment, in which suddenly, for the first time in history, any individual can collaborate with any other individual on the planet. Eventually, you're going to have people who start to take advantage of that fact and start to understand it. And you guys who got Chainology off the ground in this very unprecedented campaign against the Scientology people. You go from that. That was about a year after they're still rating Second Life, and then a couple of years after that, you have head of the NSA giving a speech about how Anonymous will soon be able to take over power plants. He was lying. He was lying. He just wanted extra funding. But
Yeah,
the point is that these are things that can happen very fast, and it really just requires the right people to be connected. And a lot of it was improvisational. Obviously, you guys, originally. The Chainology story is very interesting for me because here you've created a video, you've got all these people sort of ready to hear your next steps, and so you got to determine what the next steps are going to be, and then you also have to figure out a way to get it to work. And so you had IRC networks, and you had thousands of people coming in. You determine you're going to set it up by region or by city, and then you're going to find people in each one who are able to serve as a leader within that community and ensure that there is a single flow of sort of ideas back and forth that can be acted upon and then spread. It was all improvisational. So imagine what can happen in the future to the extent that we think more about the structures we use for this. And if we can still maintain that same agility that made Anonymous successful for several years, and we advance on that, you may see much more exciting things happen in the next few years, especially now that all the nation states have begun to discredit themselves just over and over again.
It's a good way to put it. So, with that said, right as that starts happening and kind of the power of the internet in that, like you said, anyone can come together and work with anyone else and organize quicker than anyone can respond. Do you think that had any kind of a role in just how overly prosecuted people like you were?
Yeah, I think that, obviously when we talk about what state agencies believe, we have to remember they're not monoliths, but that there's different schools of thought within them. And then, but clearly for a long period, there was a great deal of concern. And you saw, like with the in-game systems report, one of the things that was stolen from HB Gary in the great HB Gary heist of 2011, which exposed Team Themis and all this intelligence contracting stuff. There was a report they did that was very accurate, very insightful about WikiLeaks and Anonymous and what they meant. So there was clear. So we know that there were people who were pretty capable in the centers of power who understood by that point that this was something new and it was something that was a direct threat to the fundamental framework of the nation state and of power, and that that they have to keep on top of it. And they obviously spend a great deal of energy, all the different police agencies across the world, cooperating in order to stamp out this threat with some help from particular companies, intelligence contractors, and just more traditional firms. They were able to have some effect, but a lot of what burned Anonymous out over time was just the inevitable problems you're going to have by virtue of that same agility, that same everyone come into this room and we'll all talk. Those are there's an inherent difficulty whenever you have that situation, and to the extent we pursue that, then all the infiltration in the world is going to matter less. All of the opposition we get in the police pursuit is going to matter quite a bit less to the extent that we can get our shit together.
Yeah, I looking back at everything, the way it seems to flow for me is that they just don't like seeing new seats of power appear that they don't have control of. The ones that don't fit the model scare them the most, because the things that we were doing and the things that other people like us were doing were powerful, but they were powerful from the bottom up, not the top down, and that's the part that I think scared them.
Don't you see the problem? Yeah. The 1% doesn't have control. That's the problem.
If Soros had come to me with $1 billion, he might have had some say, but not much.
I mean, what I think is interesting, what you said is like, you got all these people coming into the room. There's got a lot of energy, and then it can quickly burn out. Like what would you propose would be like I guess a tactic or a strategy to like kind of like solve that and like harness that energy so it doesn't burn out as quickly?
I've spoken a bit since being released about a framework that we're developing that'll be released later this year, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit in a few minutes. The Pursuance system. This is essentially something that we have uh, just taking what insights we could from our involvement in these things, just looking and seeing just the real mundane day-to-day things that interfere with these operations and cause them to fail or to burn out. Uh, we what we're putting together is something that's still agile, uh, and it's still something in which any individual can uh, develop soft power, as in develop a reputation for getting things done, and have people ascribe to those views and work with that person. But it provides a more visible framework for what those relationships are, as in no one's surprised, and there's no debates over who gets to do this or why is somebody in charge. It's something where everyone builds their own entity from the ground up, and to the extent that anyone else wants to join, they can. To the extent they want to create their own entity, they can. And all of this is happening in a great visualized 3D space. You see like a sort of a molecular soup of opposition and activism and crowdsourced journalism, and these entities can combine. They can develop relationships either on a limited basis where they simply share information or whatever, or a more formal basis where they share resources and agree to certain ethical guidelines and that sort of thing. So we'll go into that a little bit later as well.
We'll get into some more detail on the Pursuance system. What I want to talk about is kind of what you're doing right now. Just as I understand things, you have a book coming that you're working on right now, and you have a column coming at the Intercept shortly. If you can kind of talk about those, what's the book about?
The book signed this deal with Garrar, Farrow, and Strauss right after I got out of prison. It is being billed as a sort of memoir manifesto. The first third of which, about thereabouts, will be about the Anonymous and WikiLeaks and Project PM and all of that good stuff from 2010, 11 to 12. And then the second third will be about the prison system, which will serve sort of as a larger model for how the rule of law doesn't really exist, and the real nature of our institutions and the nature of the public. And the final third will be largely the manifesto portion, explaining this pursuance system, explaining this larger concept of what we call process democracy as opposed to institutional democracy, and making the case for why these things are now viable based on what we've seen in the past, and why they'll become inevitable as this decline in the West continues.
Cool stuff. Do you have any idea when that's coming?
It'll be out middle of next year.
Cool. We will make
Meanwhile,
sure to promote that.
The Intercept column, I was doing from prison, the Barrett Brown Review of Arts and Letters in Prison. I stopped doing that right before I left, and I'm supposed to continue with them doing a column, a similar column. I haven't started it yet because I was actually waiting for us to be ready with this pursuance system presentation, because the first column will be a formal announcement as opposed to the kind of tidbits here and there I've given in interviews over the past 6 months, explaining, making the case for this, explaining why everyone should sort of jump off a cliff with me. And, the case being that, look, I mean,
It's
if
like a
you
morbid way
really
to
still
do it.
believe, yeah, I mean, well, you never know what's down that cliff. It could be candy.
Yeah,
I mean,
come on.
But it's still candy
It
will
could be a
still hurt.
bouncy house. I mean, it could be a bouncy house down there. Like,
Basically, I'll make the case that, look, if you think that what you're doing right now by participating in this democracy is not silly, then I hope you will extend that very liberal view of seriousness to what we're doing, because I think that what we're doing has a stronger moral basis and has a stronger, it's more viable. It's more viable than sitting here and just hoping things will improve and waiting for other people to do them. It's more viable than putting your faith in a political party in this country, or NGO, or just the series of structures that make up our civil society, given what has happened over the last 15, 16, pretty much everything that's happened in our adult lives. So I'll be explaining that and explaining why this is going to work, who we have involved, what it will look like, what it will allow, what kinds of people will find it useful, and what this will look like 10 years down the road.
and how much money Soros paid you, according to Fox News?
No, we're going to keep that to ourselves.
Because
Just
you know
me
that's
and
coming.
sure, whatever.
Right? Okay, so you're talking about the decline of our democracy, and I, of course, agree wholeheartedly. But we had a guy on our show, Adam Freeman, board member of Voters' Choice, and they're much like FairVote.org. They are working on ranked choice voting, instant runoff voting, in order to make a slightly better version of our current election system and to empower third parties, really. And
Well, to the extent they can get that incorporated into our election system, that would be very helpful. But that's kind of the rub right there, isn't it?
well, so the rub is it's interesting because here in Massachusetts, it was just added through their work to the party platform, which means it is fair game for the Democrats in the state house to actually raise with any bill to institute. In Maine, they actually passed it statewide for everything. Every type of election at the state level is now instant runoff, except now they have questions in court about whether it's constitutional based on their constitution's version of what elections are. But that'll be hashed out, and I still think they come somewhere because the people voted for it, literally as a ballot proposition. They voted, and so if it takes a change to the Constitution, well, the people who voted for it would probably vote for that too. But here in Massachusetts, it is now part of the platform, which doesn't mean it's getting raised in this next session, but means the one after that it probably will. And there's a bunch of counties, a bunch of cities who have done it. What are your thoughts about ranked choice voting, instant runoff voting, if you have any?
That certainly sounds like the right direction. That's one of those things that should be done no matter what, is trying to press for reform within the system as well, even while we prepare for contingencies outside the system. Those are things that that people should be doing. Absolutely, that should merit a lot of support, and I hope to see it spread. Obviously, it's going to get a great deal of opposition from all sorts of powerful forces in this country that are very happy with our current system because it's easier for them to manage. Obviously,
It's why they're in power.
Exactly. So it's going to be, but I mean that's something that relatively quickly it could gain nationwide support if they can just get that out there on the sort of the conversational agenda, and I'd be interested in seeing how that develops.
I think the next big piece on a nationwide level would be the interstate compact on national popular vote, which is
I think you would have
actually
to
getting
back
close.
up a little bit and just get the word out there. Like I think conversation would be the first things.
Getting the word out on this one's really hard,
Yeah.
according to Fair Vote, who have been trying since like 1993.
And how many people even know it exists?
Exactly. But the interstate compact is actually something that is very close to passing, and at that point, it is just nationwide. I mean, I don't know if you've looked much at that, Barrett, but the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact is a bunch of states basically saying if a majority of the Electoral College votes are now voted along popular vote lines, then we will also vote along popular vote lines instead of primaries, caucuses, or any of the other crap. And the way the compact actually works is basically just enough states have to pass it in their state for a majority of votes to have passed it for it to go into effect. And we're actually about 90% of the way there now. They're basically, if Texas and California go, it's on. And a majority of the Electoral College votes are now based on the national popular vote. And in Texas, it's coming up for you guys in the next actual session.
I mean, that's one of a number of very fine technocratic patches that are definitely worthwhile. My concern remains just on all of these reforms that you still have this same population voting, and I just have grown to trust the population as a whole less and less over time. And I also obviously have concerns about the way in which the issues themselves are sort of picked and chosen by the national press and sort of national pundits for discussion. And obviously it's greatly diseased, that process. And so any improvement that does provide for a more choice-laden democracy, I think is generally good. it's more a question for me of where are our demographics going? Like, can we depend on this next generation to be more civically engaged than the last couple ones? And that's the court's still out on that one.
I mean, you got Fox News running their propaganda machine like full blast. So whatever they want to be like voted on for the topics is going to get through.
And you've also got just a lot of incompetent, but well-meaning journalists and outlets out there that are just not capable of contending with the flow of information as it is. That's even before you start talking about the various propaganda, like more sort of black ops, information warfare, that, as we discovered with Anonymous back in 2011 through the HB Gary heist, is something that's coming into its own. The methods by which smaller and smaller entities, still with some wealth and some degree of power, can better create the narrative, make up events. We're seeing some sort of informal, haphazard versions of that. Just the ability for groups to throw mud into the water, obscure issues. That's happened forever, but it's getting to a point where some of us are very concerned about how much worse it can get when you have all these companies out there, tech companies, competing for new and better information operations that are ostensibly going to be used just for our foreign policy, but do tend up, we've already seen being used against our domestic population over and over again.
Oh, it's going to get a lot worse. It'll get a lot worse. That's
I mean, you add to that the fact that, those same tech companies like, say, Apple are now the richest, cash-rich companies in the history of the planet. That does not help the problem.
Oh, and you got Facebook that says that they they didn't have any responsibility to curtail fake, just straight up fake propaganda sites.
Well, yeah, but then at Facebook, you've also got, it's so random. Now, Mark Zuckerberg just over the last week has come out as a major proponent for universal basic income. And,
yeah, but that's still not going to prevent anyone from sending viral fake information out there.
No, it's just interesting, thinking about them with this very weird place they're kind of carving themselves.
Yeah, because whatever's going to make them more money is what they're going to be for.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's also worth noting that even if Facebook does take an active hand in trying to cull fake news, that introduces its own problem in that you have this private, wholly unaccountable company making that decision about what constitutes fake news, and they can decide that about anything, and no one has any recourse.
Absolutely. The best example of the problem with that is Washington Post a few months ago. I think right before I was released from prison, I heard about this. They had found some site that they claimed could supposedly spot fake news and would be a great authority on all these things, and then that site turned out to be nonsense, and they had to kind of retract that. So that's a very telling problem. We don't have institutions in this country with real journalistic authority in the sense of being capable of different. Yeah, they can't differentiate these things themselves necessarily. It's a very haphazard process. Those of us like Gregg and I who have been covered quite a bit and are in a position to be able to see, we know what happens, but then we see the coverage and we see how mistakes get picked up and proliferated, et cetera. We have an extra sense of how bad it is. It's worse than one can even determine just by, staying abreast of issues. It's a system that, again, was never designed to work in the sense of actually providing information. It was a system that kind of grew up just based on these haphazard, market factors and individual people's careers. And
at this point, it's entertainment. It's not. It's
unless you go to Black Twitter. Black Twitter will slam down the truth hard. It's my favorite thing to do when I need to find real coverage. Just go straight to Black Twitter.
Good times. Good times. So Barrett. So here we are, you're out, you've got your job upcoming with The Intercept, you've got your book you're working on, and The Intercept you're sort of waiting because you want to come out swinging with Pursuance as the opening article there. What do you think about Pursuance? I mean, are we looking at something that will actually be able to start beta testing and, getting out to the world this year? Is it next year? Do you guys have any timelines, milestones?
It's this year. We've got a great crew in place, designers, software engineers with backgrounds in crypto and open source who have been involved in similar projects before. We've got a guy who created Transparency Toolkit advising us. We've got a guy out of San Francisco, Steve Phillips, who runs a hackerspace out there. We have a number of his associates. We've got a board of directors that'll come into play. It'll include Jay Lederman, Tor Eklund, both, as you know, very fine lawyers who defend anons and whistleblowers. You have Russ Baker, who just came on. He's the founder of Who, What, Why, Columbia Journalism Review. Very astute fellow, wrote a great book about the Bush family back in 2008 that was widely ignored, unfortunately. We have a couple of professors from Case Western and Bard University. So we're hitting all of the different points here. We have institutional backing. We're setting up as a 403C or whatever this is. We've already started applying for grants to pay programmers from a number of foundations. I think there's like 15 we've identified that are kind of relevant to what we're doing, and we've already got people building and designing it. And so yes, it'll be in the minimum viable product will be ready in a few months, and then thereafter development will continue on the tools and utilities. So let me give another short explanation of what it is exactly. Imagine a this online 3D visual space. Everyone who's invited into the system, and this will start out seated with about 200 participants that we've hand chosen, and institutions as well, nonprofits and NGOs. Everyone, you see them as a sphere. Each of these participants can create a pursuance, which think of as a cube. They're connected to it. To the extent that they're connected to it, they have control over how it grows, what its charter is, just the various possible delineations of people working under it. They can bring on people connected to them, who answer to them, who join, on the basis of an agreement of what that position will be. They can also bring on people to have also direct control over that cube, that pursuance, that DNA / software, who thus have equal control with them. This would be more of a democratic pursuance. But there's many different combinations. I mean, just endless combinations of how these can be built, what the structures are.
The governance structures are, right?
Yes. And so people who wanted more of a democratic, more of anonymous kind of amorphous deal can still have that. But those who want something more structured, where everyone's on the same page and you know who's answering to who, and you have a system in place to ensure quality, frankly, they can have those as well. And these groups can still interact, having different governing structures. You can even have different governing structures within the same pursuance, different points in it. It's hard to give you a full sense of this without the visual aids, but people can go right now to pursuanceproject.org. That's Pursuance, PURSUANCE, project.org, and see the main presentation with diagrams explaining a little bit what this looks like. So over time, you have these pursuances that are representing sort of movements, groups that are doing perhaps very specific activist strategies. Perhaps these are NGOs, like let's say Bikes for Africa, for instance. Bikes for Africa wants to ramp up their operations, so they can have some guy with them start up a pursuance and recruit a few trusted individuals, and then allow them to recruit down the line under a certain sort of procedure, and set up something that will grow perpetually without becoming overburdensome or without lowering its quality. And some of that is possible by way of what we call the filter system. That's another aspect of it that I can't really describe very well here. But so eventually you're going to have this ecosystem of different pursuants with specialized functions like organs. You're going to see them join up because the system itself kind of encourages that. You're going to see information being shared, strategies being shared. You're going to see people develop pursuances, structures of pursuances that end up working very well for a particular function, and then resubmitting them to our little central library. And so everyone can come and see what people have devised in terms of organizing civic engagements, and take those same structures, tweak them more, resubmit them. You'll have a system that evolves in several different levels over time, and that with each participant able to bring in more participants. If we start from a strong enough base in terms of the quality of the participants, you can expect that over time you're going to maintain a reasonably high quality. And even to the extent that you don't, that's less of a problem than it is, say, in a physical meeting of just random activists, or an IRC channel where you have 100 people and all it takes is 2 or 3 to disrupt everything. Everyone has the exact same options to start and apply for pursuances. And at no point is anyone involved in something that they have not specifically engaged to do. And anyone can leave one at any time, start their own entire portions of a pursuance, can vote to leave if they'd like. So you're going to have a lot of activity. You're going to have people using this in ways that we can't envision to finally sort of harness the information age in a way that's going to create an oppositional structure, a giant sort of activist superorganism capable of confronting the criminalized institutions that are simply not able to be defeated through normal means.
I love it. I love what you're going for here, and I have to say, when you named a bunch of people there who are helping out or being involved, it was very telling to me that, strange enough, you might not know it, but 4 of them have slept on my sofa.
Not at the same time, though.
No, not at the same time. But
Alex Winter as well, who I'm sure you've spoken
indeed,
with.
Alex is amazing.
He's also on the board, and he's been a great help. And we have a large network of just people beyond that who are contributing. This is something that is more viable. It's easier to convince people to give this a shot than it would have been several years ago. Things have gotten that bad, and it's not just for people who are looking to rearrange the system entirely. This could be thought of as scaffolding around a building, and the scaffolding could be there to conduct repairs, or it could be there to protect us when the building starts collapsing. So there's a wide. We're trying to create a wide.
Let's talk about a few of the things that are, I guess, for lack of a better term, fans would care about. Let's say I start a Pursuance. Is it deletable?
You as the person who starts it may delete it, and if you delegate that power to others, they can delete it. It just depends on how you proceed with that.
So what happens if you get a whole bunch of Pursuance for the same cause acting parallel, like with one another, and not and it just happens to be I see one of the big problems now when I go to any type of grassroots meetup or these type of local organization meetings, and we just want to discuss about what we want to change, and it usually just happens to be a whole bunch of individual people working alone, all wanting to do the same cause, but no one's communicating.
This is actually built in part to address those kind of things. So within the Pursuance system, as opposed to the rest of our working spaces, all of the pursuances are at least semi-visible, as in, unless you have set your settings to be entirely opaque for security reasons, people who are joining the Pursuance system can see all these pursuances, and they can see basically what they're due, what the charter is, and all that, and kind of how they're structured, again, to the extent the defaults are set that way. So you're out there and you have a pursuance doing one thing, and you see a couple other pursuances that are doing the same kind of goal, and in some cases they might be doing it a different way, in which case you have several different methods being tried by different people, and as time goes on and one proves more successful, they're going to be more likely to recruit better people, or perhaps the other one might adopt their methods. But to the extent that you have several doing the same thing, with this, you're more likely to see them interplay with each other. They're more likely to compare notes, because we make it easy to do that. We make it kind of actually sort of automatic, and but you're always going to have that. It's not necessarily a terrible thing to have a couple of different groups. Generally they're using different tactics.
When you talk about it, when you talk about it being kind of automatic, are you referring to, at the state that someone tries to set up a pursuance, it informs them that there's already one doing that based on, some kind of criteria? It's like, when you're on a forum, a V-bulletin or something that's got some good plugins on it, and you start a new thread in the forum, sometimes it'll say, are you sure you want to start that? Here's 10 other threads that sound like the same thing. Are you going to have that sort of stuff?
Yeah, certainly. There's a number of sort of visualization tools that make people aware of what else is going on. As in, so when you create a pursuance, you can write a little charter or manifesto just explaining what it's trying to do and generally how it's going to do it. And you also have tags, you can attach to it. So you can search through these tags through a number of different ways. If you're someone who's a participant who wants to join a pursuance of a certain sort, you can search through the database very easily. And so in this situation, someone creates a pursuance, they put the tag, and it's prison reform, and they see, okay, there's already somebody doing prison reform. Then they can go and see what exactly they're doing and how they're doing it. And if they want to nonetheless create their own pursuance and try with using different people or different strategies, they can do that. But they'll be aware exactly of what else is already being done. And then, from that point, that's their decision. how they're going to go about it. No one, of course, has to join theirs, and no one will unless they're bringing something new to the table or something better than what's already being done for the most part.
Where did you get the why Pursuance? Why the name?
We wanted something that was not a common word. Pursuant is fairly common, but pursuance is not. But more importantly, it refers to these are entities that are created for specific goals, something that people are pursuing together. And although most of them will be somewhat specific and somewhat regimented, somewhat specialized, they don't have to be. They could be, more broad-based. Let's fight in world poverty, and they may develop a number of mechanisms to do that within the pursuance, specialized mechanisms. But they're all still pursuing something. So we just had to coin a term, and that was the best one that came to mind.
The tools that this system is going to provide, you're gonna log in, you're gonna set up a pursuance. You're gonna tag it, let's say prison reform, and you're gonna write a description. My group is for this. When you get there and you start playing with the tools, I mean, in the limited amount of information that, is out there online, in some places like Reddit and whatnot, it sounds like you're going to be providing, chat systems, wiki systems, and collaborative systems. Is that kind of what we're looking at here? Is there going to be more than that?
There's a bunch of things that have already been created that will be integrated into this. One is Transparency Toolkit, which is a great deal that was created with a grant by a fellow out of Berlin named Shadash MC McGrath, who's advising us. Our main developer, Stephen Phillips, has created a couple of other programs that will be integrated. One is Leap Chat, it's a zero-knowledge chat platform. There's a task management system that will be kind of separate. Think of it as like sort of a pocket universe, a parallel universe, not in this main universe of pursuances that each pursuance has access to, and that we're going to address task management in a different way, just taking what's already out there and improving upon it, adding some more protocols. You're going to have a lot of other tools for like collaborative pads, but in many cases, we're going to try to the extent we can't think of any major changes, we're going to try to integrate existing open source software. To the extent that there are things that we think can be done better, we're going to be doing that. So after the minimum viable product is released, there'll be a long period in which we'll be adding features, and as time goes on, it's something we'll be developing continuously, even after it's been initiated.
Is the source code going to be open sourced? Are we talking GitHub here, or is a lot of it going to be kept private? Or
no, it's all on GitHub.
You have a license you guys have preferred and chosen?
Stephen Phillips can tell you more about that. I'm not entirely sure about those things, as you probably know.
Yeah, we'll get that information. We'll make sure it's posted along with the episode on the website. We'll make sure that the Pursuance org, Pursuance Project org is on the website too. We'll make sure that all of this is up. On Pursuance here, I put a lot of thought years ago into what a system like this might look like, and realized that life for me was not going to allow me to put the time and effort in at that point. And I'm really glad that, of all the people I know, you actually have gotten this thing coming together, and in a way better than what I was thinking about building, just because the people you've gotten to surround you on this one is amazing. And I honestly can't wait to see it and play with it and, start actually using it for some projects myself.
Well, you'll be able to. We're going to have a testing period in which we're going to play around with it, and I think that with something like this, you're going to have people who will be very interested in just creating pursuances for different functions, designing different structures that could theoretically work. And then that's another thing you can do with this is, even if you don't want to run a project, you don't have the time or whatever to do it yourself. If you have an idea, you can create just a simple pursuance listing that idea and either leave it locked until you find somebody you want to take it over, or just leave it out there for someone to take and start running with it. Of course, people can make copies of pursuance structures, so several people can, there's just a number. There's a great deal of nuance to this that we're kind of coming aware of as we think more about it. And Steve Phillips in particular has brought in some extraordinary ideas on how to make this better. This all comes from a more simple project that I devised in 2009 that was originally intended for bloggers and journalists to better evaluate information. Then it became more of a civic platform. And then obviously, when I got involved with Anonymous, we sort of abandoned it for a while. And luckily, I've had much more time to reflect, and I've now able to bring on people like him and like the others that we've have in our core group that these are people out there who just like much of our constituency, our intended constituency, have great ideas. Some of them are able to work with an institution. Some of them are the kind of people who can work within the existing confines of commerce or academia or whatever. But there's a lot of people who just can't, but who nonetheless have talent and energy. And that's what Anonymous was very much about, was providing an outlet for those people. And this is the same idea here. We're going to try to harness the great number of people out there who either don't trust institutions or don't see them as enough or whatever, and give them a chance to compete on the same playing field as everyone else and get to have their ideas considered.
So let's answer the biggest question of all for the audience, beyond all the fun tools and who's behind it. How much is this going to cost them to use? Absolutely free, everybody. As it should be. That's the only way it's going to get adopted at the level that we need it to get adopted.
Yeah, I think there'll be extent to which NGOs, there's other features. So in order to maintain our servers, I think we're talking about providing additional help to NGOs that want to pay for it, but everyone, can everyone who's invited and everyone who they invite. Plan. Yeah, exactly. Of course, in addition to that, we'll also be providing free assistance to NGOs and whatever who want to use this but don't necessarily, have the expertise to, or don't think they have the expertise to make this work. It's actually pretty simple. But we put a lot of thought into how, hypothetical NGOs and nonprofits can use this and integrate it into their activities, and thought about the problems that might come up and try to address those. And one of the pursuances that we create and that we'll be overseeing will be one that's specifically dedicated to helping, small groups, small existing institutions get onto the system and start making it a part of what they do.
So you'll have a user onboarding and support pursuance.
Absolutely, yes. There's probably several of them.
That is something I'm sure a lot of the audience will want to know, because there are a lot of people who have a lot of good ideas and want to help, but then they look at the computer and stare at the screen for a few minutes and decide that they don't know how to use this thing and walk away. And
just that, I think a lot of people want to do a lot of and try to I guess create a lot of change, or bring light to a lot of things that need to be changed, and a lot of people don't know how to change things and change this as we have.
These types of systems are the ones that we're specifically attempting to fight, including, I would hope, the people who use this and the people who are creating this are attempting to fight, are hard to fight, hard to take down, and they resist any and all change. So you've got
resistance. It's a lot of times it's just getting people to listen to you.
Well, sure, but yeah. I mean, that's kind of a form of resistance, in that it's built into the way the structures work and operate, that there's just, friction in the way of you even getting to the people to talk about change before they get to tell you, no, we don't want any, thank you. Exactly. So platforms like this are very important, because the only way you get the general public in any kind of numbers that will matter to the people at the top in ways that the people at the top can't stop them is through systems like this. And
organization has always been the most powerful tool, and that's why organized labor has been fought with the actual dynamite since its existence.
Yeah, they hate it when we organize and do anything from the bottom up.
Organized people are the most dangerous things to authoritarian rule.
Well, there we go. I'm loving this, Barrett. I like what you're working on. I can't wait to read your new column on The Intercept when you're ready to go there, and of course the book sometime next year. You've got the audience for a second. Is there anything else you want to say to them?
Yeah, if you want to stay up to date on the Pursuance system, you can go to pursuanceproject.org and sign up, and you'll receive notifications when we get closer to launching. And at which point people can apply to be in the first sort of seeding, the first couple hundred people who will use it. And meanwhile, there's going to be more information released, more specific information addressing a lot of these technical questions, addressing possible problems that people can imagine. But we want to see, there was a huge number of people out there in 2011, 2012 who were very excited about this larger idea of civic participation, broad-based, crowdsourced, self-organized civic participation. And it's time to take those things to a little bit forward. It's time to think about, how we organize these things, what our basis is, what our framework is. And if we even create a small, just a slight improvement in the efficiency of these things, Well, I mean, judging from what we were able to accomplish years ago, it's clear that this is something that's worth doing. It's worth trying.
There was also like a small election in 2016 that really aggravated a lot of voters. So I think there's a lot of energy behind getting organized and changing.
Yeah, I mean, I would just tell people, don't put all your eggs in one basket. If you're still hoping that this republic of ours can work, great, and I wish you luck in reforming it. But in the meantime, we need to have contingency plans. We need to have something where we start building up a community of reasonable people who actually respect the rights of others, and put them in place so that as time goes on and as things either get worse or better, there will be a new force working in the world against all of the forces arrayed against us.
I love it. All right. So how about we leave that there, and we are going to make sure that on the website, on the social, everywhere that you can get this episode, you will also get access to those links so you can sign up to things, so you can reach out to them, follow progress, hear about it when it launches. We'll get all that up when we get the episode up tomorrow. So Barrett, you mind sticking around for a few minutes to talk about some wonderful current events I would love your opinions on?
Absolutely.
So, have you been following the last couple days the CNN blackmail, supposedly, of a person on Reddit who made that video that President Trump shared on Twitter?
Yeah, I mean, the fellow himself, as it turns out, also had engaged in doxing people. So it's kind of amusing that he was put in that position. CNN has explained it, by saying that, we didn't mean that, that line was put in by the editors, apparently, is what they say. And it was really intended to convey that this is a static situation. Obviously, it sounds like, hey, don't do anything else stupid. There's something that we dislike, or we'll put out your name. And even if it was that, I really wouldn't have minded myself. That's the kind of thing that we used to do. And it's a little bit unconventional for a news outlet. I'm not really sure why it really mattered who made that video. It's just Trump, in this goofy thing, wrestling with CNN. I just,
Well, it wasn't exactly a hard find for like the CNN, because I follow a few, like a whole bunch of journalists on Twitter, and the one who actually found it just went, because the guy was bragging on the Reddit site that Trump had shared his meme that he had made, and just went on his page.
It wasn't the hardest doxing in the world.
It wasn't really even a dox.
But they did have to, this guy had been shitposting, to put it lightly, all over. And, they had to turn that username into a real name, which did take a little bit of work. But, the thing I find funny about it is that here's CNN saying, we're not going to put this person's name out there. And in response, they're getting brigaded by a bunch of people who are putting all of their docs out on the internet.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the people who are really mad at CNN about this, they have no moral applications to their own side whatsoever. These are the kind of people who do not object to anything done by anyone remotely connected to their own causes.
So if they're angry about the fact that CNN could put out this person's, information, and their response is to put out all of CNN's information, all the reporters' home addresses, I mean, I gotta say, if I'm CNN there, I dump this guy's information and just say, fine. I mean, fight fire with fire if we're gonna play this game.
Well, it's not the guy that's doing it. It's
Are you sure? I don't believe his apology for a minute after reading all the other stuff he posted.
I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt that it is a real apology, just because I don't know who the hell this guy is, and I don't.
Peeing his pants so he gets to keep his job.
Well, yeah, and that should be the biggest wake up calls of the people on the internet. Like, hey, you're not really anonymous. Like, if you do shitty things can be they have consequences. So if you're gonna make a career of making racist memes on the internet, hey, guess what? That might cost you your job. Maybe just not be an asshole. I mean, that should be the bigger question.
Yeah, I mean, these people are big on propriety when it's convenient. There's obviously, we've seen enough of that over the last 15 years, 16, 17 years to know that. So.
And then we get to all the more fun. The G20 today over in Hamburg, which was just great with all the rioters and everyone out on the street. I'm watching it the entire time. Like all day I've had the TV on various channels, showing live streams of the protesters. And I gotta say, if I'm being honest with the world, I was watching it the entire time, just screaming at the TV that they were doing it wrong. Why had the riot police's line held? Why weren't there were 5 times the amount of protesters as there were riot cops. Why weren't the protesters already through that line? I was getting angry at the TV.
Well, that happens. We are a smaller society than we were. We're people of smaller, stature, less valor, than we're even. If you can go back and look on YouTube and see a Great Atari Teenage Riot show that happened in Berlin on May Day, 1999, and they had a nice little riot there, and they were chasing the riot cops away by the end of it. Just go look up. Anyone listening to this who wants to see a really awesome concert by a really awesome German anarchist, hardcore, digital hardcore group, which I think is a term they made up. Go Google Atari Teenage Riot May Day Berlin or something like that, and you'll find it. It's badass.
Follow Alec Empire on Twitter.
Oh, yeah, they do that too. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a worthy fun. Yeah, so they're over there having all kinds of fun, and Trump gets to go meet Putin tomorrow and have a little private meeting with him. What do we think's coming from that? Do you think? I have the personal opinion that they walk in there and.
Well, the White House has already made a statement that there's no planned agenda.
Yeah, well, no, see, there's no planned agenda from Trump's side,
Yeah.
but Putin has a very clear and detailed agenda that everyone already knows because they've already stated all the points they want to hit. And so our guys walking in with no agenda, their guys walking in with a plan, and I think Russia gets everything they want out of that meeting, and we get nothing.
I mean, they did say that Trump was asking aides to make sure that they have deliverables. So saying that they don't have any agenda might be a bit of an overstatement.
That was just the White House's own statement that
I
they're
know,
saying.
I'm not saying.
Well, like, that's spicy doing his work.
Right. It's par for the course.
What I think is funny, and I saw this on BuzzFeed, like as I was driving over here, not like literally driving, but like right before I came over here. Apparently, the White House staffers waited too long to make reservations for Trump to be in Hamburg at all, and so there was no hotel available for.
They made a similar mistake not long ago with Rex Tillerson too.
I know
conference.
No, I think they did that on purpose.
I know a bunch of
Okay,
activists in
probably.
Hamburg who would have been happy to have him sleeping on their sofa.
Right? Like I just like.
I won't talk about the outcomes I'm imagining for him, but just that they would have been happy. I think he would have had like dicks like drawn on his forehead by the end of it.
Did they have enough sofas for all the Secret Service agents? 'Cause that's a lot of sofas.
So hey Barrett, you want to solve the world's problems with me here?
I guess.
All right.
I mean, we don't want to trifle you.
Yeah,
if you've
I mean,
got
just
the time.
give us an answer for North Korea. What are we doing here? Are we invading? Are we ignoring? Is China finally going to step up its game?
Well, we invaded once in the
It
early
didn't work out
50s.
so well.
And it's just these are all problems of our own creation to a large extent. We provide great propaganda for dictators around the world by virtue of our past misdeeds. Now we're in a situation in which I myself would not even try to come up with an answer to this one. I have no idea. I mean, just
Right.
Well, the problem, like, I think really is like any answer could potentially lead to the death of like millions of South Koreans.
yeah, exactly. That's one of the big problems. I guess that's the major problem. That's the
China
big rub.
doesn't want
And
a
North Koreans
unified
as well.
Korea. China does
Yeah.
not want them unified and powerful on that border.
Yeah.
They're happy that
And-
everything's destabilized.
Well, they don't want 10 million or so North Korean refugees coming into China, which I understand. I wouldn't want them coming to my house either. But they're in a difficult position as well. The status quo for them is, they're Chinese. They love the status quo. So, but then on the other hand, it's possible they understand the status quo is not sustainable. But the question is, what are they secretly thinking about? What is their actual plan? And what is it going to matter what our plan is if China's got one?
That is an interesting way to look at it. I mean, at that point, the only thing that will matter rhetoric, I think, because, I don't see Trump actually doing anything against them, but he sure is talking a big game right now.
Well, I saw something, or I forget where it was. It might have been MSNBC. But apparently Kim Jong-un has tested more missiles than his father had done his entire time, like while he was alive.
Well, at this point, they've actually got better missile tech than what they had then, and they're iterating at a much faster pace than even our experts over here thought they would. No one was expecting the missile they launched, the last one they launched, to actually work as good as it did. That really, I mean, just publicly threw everyone for a loop. So that is kind of interesting. Although the people saying, if you actually do the math, the people saying, oh well, that one could reach America, that one went straight up, and the farther it got, the thinner the air got. And when it got into space and actually went up, higher than say the space station, at that point, it can travel a lot farther. If it was actually aimed at America, people have already done the math online. You can see some interesting like physics professors and whatnot. It would have been going through much thicker air in a much denser atmosphere and had a lot more friction and probably not made it to us. The problem there is, of course, the probably. It still gets close, but
I don't care. I don't think North Korea having a missile that hits anything
is a good idea.
is a good idea. Like, I don't think that's a good idea for, at all.
Yeah, so
Well,
at that
if
point,
it can hit Russia, that's okay.
well, now.
Well, no, because they've got a ton of methane gas that is about to explode into the air. So we want to kind of keep their land intact.
Doesn't Russia still have, random doomsday devices still enabled that launch their nukes if they feel like they've been attacked?
I don't know. I haven't asked Trump lately.
At least one of them they forgot about for a while. So
they found
there
that
may
one.
be some that they don't even know about.
There's so much news to talk about that I mean we can't cover all of this. I mean there's the rally, there's CNN. I mean, heck,
the head of the government ethics oversight committee resigned today
after coming into conflict with Trump multiple times.
Yeah, that's a really good sign when the head of the ethics committee has
the only one that's pretty much trying to hold him accountable is saying, like, you know what? I think it's time to resign.
I'm done. The first time I saw Sean Spicer on the TV and I'm watching him, I thought to myself, and this is not just because you're actually on the show, but I thought to myself that it would be much more entertaining to have Barrett up there doing this. And I actually, imagined what it would be like with you replacing Spicer, Barrett.
I might.
Did you think about it for a minute?
I mean,
you like...
this is the day and age in which something like that could easily happen. I mean, Alex Jones has anyone can now do anything.
I did hear that one of the requirements of your release was a 40-hour-a-week job. So, I hear that Spicer is looking for a replacement.
I think that's more like 220 hours a week,
or alternatively, it might be a couple.
It's more it's actually 3 hours a week if you actually talking about the actual job itself, and then less and less. It could be 0 hours by next week. So,
but how many of those hours are hiding in a bush outside of the White House? From cameras?
Yes. I don't know if that's considered as break or if that's considered actual working hours. There's a
lot
of questions.
It's actually called a working lunch. So you actually you gotta keep answering the phone, but you're allowed to eat lunch.
But is the heavy drinking on the clock?
Oh, that's actually just called health benefits.
This makes sense.
So what you're gonna get instead of the insurance.
Good times.
I would have some serious logistical questions before I took the job. That and I am an anarchist who hates America, so that's also a problem, I think.
Yeah, I think that might.
That gets in the way.
That might be a check minus on your resume.
Well,
if you're interviewing for the job.
Are you the kind of Texan that I am? I don't know that we ever had this talk, but the kind that still feels that this country might have stolen our land.
Yes, I'm sitting on it right now.
Well, they say
I had to move away.
What is it? The Texas America's border or something like that. There's like a saying that Mexican Texans.
There was a contrived incident on the border, on the existing border between the U.S. and Mexico, and a lot of people like Abraham Lincoln opposed the war and openly criticized it and said it was immoral and it was based on a falsehood, and that's how we got
across the border crossed us is like a lot of the that's what Eva Longoria, because she's hardcore a Texicana, where it's she's Mexican but she's lived her whole life, generations, hundreds of generations in Texas.
Hundreds of generations is like the Neanderthals, I think. It's
a
bit far back.
hundreds of years, stuff like that.
The same, to a lesser extent, same thing. My family was here before the federal government got here, so it kind of,
Yeah, so
we
was mine.
we've gone to all this trouble to escape the civilized society, and suddenly civilized society just keeps encroaching, and bringing its civilized law enforcement, civilized.
I mean, that's how civilization works. It's like you just kind of stay put and society grows. You just got to figure out how you want it to grow.
Right, but then you end up in a war against, another nation, and you free yourself as your own country, and then when all of your troops are
Yeah, when
beaten
you-
down and like you have no more power left because you just went through that big war with, what is now Mexico, but at that point was, kind of,
That's
up
what
in
the
on
Native
ours.
Americans have been doing this
right,
their
right
entire
when you get to that
lives.
point where you can't fight, that's when the U.S. government shows up on the border of Texas and says, "Hey, so want to be a state?" And you say, "Well, we can't really fight you, so sure."
Well, in defense of the U.S., that was part of the long-term scam there. I mean, there was not much opposition from the Texas Congress to do that.
No.
This was a real estate operation in the tradition of Texas real estate operations. My dad was a real estate guy in Dallas, and he got indicted for it, so I know how these things work. There's generally a good long-term plan ahead of it.
Indeed. So we've kind of gone off on a tangent about Texas. It's weird being such a liberal who is also such a fan of my home state.
It's a great state. I loved Tyler was amazing when I went there. But Lubbock's got that can blow up. That place can.
For all of our fans in Lubbock, I
no,
don't
that place is
apologize.
a
Actually,
shithole.
Get out of Lubbock.
That is an entire shithole.
Move to Dallas. It's fun.
Oh my god, yeah.
You can have dinner with
Because when
Barrett.
the wind blows from the north, it smells like cow shit. literally, because they've got all the slaughterhouses there. I went to Texas Tech for a whole semester and then left screaming.
So now that we've gone this far off, I think that gives us good reason to call the episode and say
Don't
this
go
has
to
been
Lubbock.
great just having a conversation with Barrett. I will say that for a short period there, Barrett, it sounded like you were on the set of the next Top Gun movie. We heard a few airplanes there.
And then in a siren.
Yeah, I like to live in exciting environments, lots of air activity.
You like to give phone interviews while you're around an airport?
So everyone, you can join us next time when we'll be live, and I will be inviting him back, and hopefully by then we'll actually have video and we can do a joint
I'm gonna have to
bubble
start wearing
bath.
pants.
No, we can do a joint bubble bath episode where we're side by side.
Oh my god, I'm gonna bring my rubber duckies.
Everyone up for this?
Oh,
How
it's
about
good.
you, Barrett?
Absolutely.
I'm in.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. This has been a good episode. We'll post all the links we need to all of Barrett's stuff, and thanks for listening. All right, bye.
The GreggHoush Show was created by GreggHoush, executive produced by co-host Eric Gaures, and co-hosted by Kayla Avery. Other contributors include producer and writer Anna Jeffrey, co-host producer David McGuffin, and writer-engineer Robert Tortora. Theme music for this show was produced and recorded by Geneva de Colbert. Our interns include co-host Casey McLaughlin, writer-engineer Alec Greeny, writer Maddie Locicero, and associate producer, writer, and announcer William Kennedy. You're listening to New Revolutionary Radio, your call to action. Thank you for listening. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GreggHoush Show and on Instagram at GreggHoush. If you like what you've heard and want to be a part of it, check out patreon.com/GreggHoush Show. In exchange for funding our programming, you gain access to exclusive content such as uncut editions of our podcast. We have new episodes every Thursday night. We hope you listen in.